Hey guys, this is Amber George. Welcome to my podcast. Today we're going to be talking about biomimicry. And so today we're going to cover a couple of things. So first we're just going to be talking about biomimicry, what it means. We're also going to be talking about just some examples of it in technology. Then we're going to move to some examples specifically in the waste sector. And then also going to hit on how it relates to my capstone a little bit. And then finally, we're just going to talk about some of the ethical implications and some other considerations that we should think about as we just use nature-based solutions and biomimicry in the future. So let's just start by defining biomimicry a little bit. So when we think about mimicking nature, we are just looking at systems that have existed for a long time and have existed well. If we think about just isolated ecosystems that have not been disturbed by human activity, they have been doing well in closed circular systems that have not introduced new sources, and they have been successful. And so when we look at our systems that have been just trying to implement new artificial materials and have just been producing a lot of waste, we have seen that these systems are not necessarily successful. And so we look to nature to mimic these systems, and we have learned that there is a bit of circularity there. These nature systems operate in a way of where there is no waste, right? So every organism's waste is another's raw material. And so this is what Seth Galrick explains in his TED Talk, in which we all got to see during last week's module. During his explanation of biomimicry, that's kind of where I got motivated for this podcast, and how I've been motivated for my capstone as well. So one example that I've seen use biomimicry so far with just technology, Coolant is actually just a company, and they're based in India, where it's really hot and where they've actually been known to use terracotta for a long time to just keep their drinks cold. Their cool design that they have introduced is the cooling cacti. So they've looked at cactus just in nature and how it interacts with its environment. They have put terracotta plates to kind of mimic the thorns of a cactus. They have mimicked the cooling effect of a cactus's capacity of storing water in its body and keeping its surroundings cool. So it's pretty cool. They can be found indoor and outdoor, and they can be placed with fountain piping, or they can just take advantage of the natural conditions after it rains and keep the surrounding area cool like a cactus would. That was just one little introduction, but now I want to specifically get into how biomimicry is used in the waste sector. I wanted to hit a little bit closer to home, so I live in Louisiana, and so this is actually being done on the coast of Louisiana. This is called the Coalition to Restore Coastal Louisiana. They're collecting oyster shells all along the coast, and so I think there are about 17 restaurants right now that are donating their eaten oyster shells after their consumers eat their oysters. They just collect all these shells and they donate them to a program that uses all of these oyster shells for the coast. This is an amazing program because it does reduce waste. So all of the oyster shells that are collected would have gone to a landfill. And so this is just crazy because all of these oyster shells should be going back into the ocean. So if we just look at how nature should have acted, just animals that would have been eating these oysters, or if these oysters were to have passed in the ocean, baby oysters just need to attach to these oyster shells in order for them to grow. And so this is just a way that this group has brought these oyster shells back along the coast. They are regenerating the environment, part of biomimicry. It brings back habitat for reproduction. It reduces waste, the oyster food waste that ends up in the landfills, and all the while it's providing a defense against the stronger storms that are coming just as an effect of climate change. So these are all really great benefits. And on top of that, there are a lot of great social benefits that come along with this program. So the community's really engaged, everyone's volunteering. This is all through volunteer work. Lots of people are getting outside, they're getting on boats, they're throwing oysters into the ocean. This is incredible. I also had to mention it just involves the cuisine and the culture of the community instead of shaming those who are just actively involved in the culture who are eating these oyster shells. This program is partnering with them, so instead of calling out these restaurants for contributing to the waste, it's actually giving them a platform and giving them the opportunity to be a part of coastal restoration, which is an awesome opportunity. And as of 2024, these partners actually get a tax credit. It actually kind of encouraged me to start thinking about things a little bit more. So my capstone is going to be a defense structure for the coast. So I have been thinking about a proposal for a hybrid structure that incorporates green vegetation as well as a hard structure, so something a little bit more concrete that can anchor down the vegetation. And so the reason why I'm doing this is just because replanting efforts of seedlings like mangroves have been less successful in recent years because of the intensifying storms and stronger waves. And so most seedlings are being washed away or just have lower chances of rooting because they don't have enough support along the shore. All this time I was kind of thinking of introducing something like concrete, and so this course and the past couple of courses have really made me start to think about just other types of hard designs, not necessarily artificial designs. So it could be these oyster shells. And so this actually sounds very promising, and I'm glad to learn that I can incorporate an element to an ecosystem that was already present. And I can just use this as a way to create a defense against just climate change impacts. Something to think about, just considerations moving forward as we think about these nature-based solutions. So the program deploys their oysters in these gabion baskets, so they're these square wire baskets, and they also do this with mesh plastic bags, so kind of similar to the size of a sandbag. While I don't have the exact information on the material of the bags, I'm interested on the impact of plastic over time in the coastal waters, just as we start to think about the concerns for microplastics. The organization has reported amazing feedback on the returning habitat, so this is good news, but I'm hesitant to just accept the design of wire plastic as it impacts sea life, and I'm hesitant to accept that these wire plastic bags stay intact for their entirety of their life. So I would just be concerned if one were to come undone and float into deeper waters. So if I were to use this approach in my capstone project, I would definitely use the wire gabion baskets as the base for my mangrove seedlings instead of the plastic bags. But I am curious to see if we could brainstorm any alternatives together. So please feel free to comment any sort of alternative you see to this, because I do know that these oysters need to be coming out of the bags a little bit, so that's why they kind of use like the plastic mesh so that the marine life can still attach, but so that the mesh kind of gives opportunity for the oysters to stay inside of the bags so that there is still a coastal defense structure. So if y'all have any ideas, I would love to hear it. But other than that, that's all I got today. Thanks for listening. Bye.